All right, let's dive right into this gripping case file to unravel what has to be one of literature's most chilling mysteries, the true identity of Mr. Hyde. Today, we're not just passively reading a story, we're stepping directly into the foggy, gaslit streets of 19th century London to piece together a puzzle that, honestly, completely shatters our understanding of human nature.
We've got to start our investigation with a really visceral, haunting account from a man named Mr. Enfield. He recounts this incredibly bizarre event he witnessed at 3 o'clock on a pitch-black winter morning. Out of the darkness, a deformed, deeply eerie little man and a young girl literally collide at a street corner. But instead of stopping or helping her up, the man just calmly tramples right over the child's body, leaving her screaming on the ground. Enfield described the sheer unnatural horror of it by saying, "It wasn't like a man, it was like some damn juggernaut."
And this incident immediately poses our central mystery. Why on earth is Dr. Henry Jekyll, a wealthy, reputable, and, a deeply respected pillar of the community, protecting this absolute monster? Throughout this explainer, we're going to act as detectives. We'll be working right alongside the stoic lawyer Mr. Utterson to follow the paper trail, the forensic evidence, and the horrifying eyewitness accounts to finally uncover the truth.
Section 1. The Sinister Mr. Hyde, an unprovoked attack. So the trampling of the young girl in the dead of night was horrifying enough on its own, but it was the aftermath that really raised eyebrows. The crowd that gathers, which actually includes a doctor who turned sick and white with the sheer desire to kill the man just by looking at him, they managed to corner this brute. We find out his name is Edward Hyde. Now, to avoid a massive public scandal, Hyde just agrees to pay the girl's family £100.
But here is where things get really baffling. It's the connection this payment reveals. Hyde doesn't actually have the cash on him. Instead, he disappears into this sinister-looking building and emerges with a check for the balance. But the signature on the check isn't his. It's signed by the thoroughly respectable, downright saintly Dr. Henry Jekyll. And it's perfectly genuine. So think about this. A monster walks out of a cellar door at 4 in the morning with a massive payout funded by one of London's most upstanding citizens. Utterson suspects it's blackmail, but as we'll see, the truth is way, way stranger than that.
Section 2. The Strange Connection, the Doctor's Will.
Okay, so Utterson is Dr. Jekyll's lawyer, and he has this document in his safe that has just been a massive thorn in his side for a while now, Jekyll's will. It explicitly states that in the event of Jekyll's death or, and this is very strange, his unexplained absence for any period exceeding 3 months, literally everything he owns is to pass into the hands of his friend and benefactor Edward Hyde. Utterson is horrified by this. I mean, a known, brutal thug is positioned to inherit an absolute fortune if Jekyll simply vanishes? It makes no sense.
And it really highlights this bizarre dichotomy between the two men. On one side, you have Dr. Jekyll, older, respected, generous, with a large, handsome face and firm hands. And then on the other side, you've got Mr. Hyde, younger, pale, dwarfish, carrying this unnameable deformity and just giving off an aura of pure evil that actually makes people physically sick to be near. How could these two polar opposites possibly be associates, and why on earth does Hyde have a key to Jekyll's laboratory?
Section 3. The Carew Murder Case, a Brutal Escalation.
Let's trace the timeline of this murder, because it builds a direct, undeniable forensic link right back to Dr. Jekyll. Nearly a year passes without incident. Then, late one night, a maid is looking out her window and she witnesses an elderly, polite gentleman simply asking for directions from a man she recognizes as Mr. Hyde. Suddenly, with no warning, Hyde breaks out in this great flame of anger. With ape-like fury, he just clubs the old man to death right there in the street, audibly shattering his bones. The victim is later identified as Sir Danvers Carew.
But the most damning piece of evidence is left right at the scene, the murder weapon. It was a rare, heavy wooden cane, and it had actually splintered under the stress of this insensate cruelty. Half of it just rolled into the gutter. When Utterson is brought in to view the evidence, his blood runs absolutely cold. He recognizes the cane immediately. Why? Because it was a gift he himself had given to Dr. Henry Jekyll years ago. Utterson leads the police through the nightmare-like, totally fog-drenched streets of Soho to Hyde's apartment, where they find the other half of the cane sitting behind the door. Hyde is now a wanted murderer, and the net is tightly closing around Jekyll.
Section 4. The Impossible Transformation, the Break-In, and the Truth.
At this point, Jekyll isolates himself entirely. His terrified pool comes to Utterson, completely convinced that his master has been murdered and that the killer is still hiding out in the laboratory.
Together, they take an axe and just smash down the heavy red baize door of the laboratory cabinet. But inside, they don't find Jekyll. Instead, they find the twitching body of Edward Hyde. He's just committed suicide by drinking cyanide. But you gotta notice this bizarre detail here. Hyde is dressed in clothes that are way too large for him, clothes that very clearly belong to the much larger Dr. Jekyll. So, where is the doctor?
Well, the crucial, mind-bending point is finally revealed, not by a dead body, but through a sealed letter from Jekyll's recently deceased colleague, Dr. Lanyon. Lanyon writes of an impossible, deeply traumatic event that he was forced to witness. Hyde had come to his home, absolutely desperate for specific chemical powders. Hyde mixed a potion, drank it, and then, right before Lanyon's very eyes, he reeled, he swelled, and his face turned black. His features literally melted and altered until, standing right there in his place, was none other than Dr. Henry Jekyll. The monster and the doctor were the exact same person all along.
Section 5. The Science of Duality. Man is not truly one, but truly two.
Now that we know the who and the how, we really need to dig into the why behind this extraordinary series of crimes. We open Jekyll's final, full statement of the case to understand his rather twisted scientific motive. You see, Jekyll wasn't a purely evil man initially. He was a man torn. He had high aspirations, a real desire for public respect, but he also had these dark, hidden pleasures that he engaged in secretly. And this created a profound duplicity in his life. He felt an intense, agonizing struggle between his moral, upright side and his darker urges. As he flat out states in his confession, he longed for a way to separate these two warring halves, to basically let the unjust go his way without burdening the upright twin.
And that leads us to this terrifying psychological theory, the duality of man. Jekyll believed that man is not truly one, but truly two. He hypothesized that these two distinct natures could actually be chemically separated, so he synthesized a specific salt and created a potion. Now, it is absolutely vital to note here, the potion didn't create the evil. The chemical itself was totally neutral. It simply shook the doors of the prison house of his disposition. Because his virtue was slumbering and his ambition was wide awake, what rushed out of that open door was pure, unadulterated evil. It was Edward Hyde.
Section 6. A fatal loss of control. The addiction takes over.
What starts out as this scientific triumph, a way to basically indulge in vice without any social consequence, it quickly twists into a terrifying metaphor for addiction and a complete, fatal loss of control. Let's just walk through the terrifying downward spiral that seals his doom. At first, Jekyll feels completely safe. He can drink the potion, be Hyde for a night, and then drink it again to return to his respectable fireside. But his devil had been long caged, and it came out roaring. Hyde's cruel urges grow vastly stronger over time. Then the ultimate terror strikes. Jekyll goes to sleep as himself, but he wakes up, looks down, and sees the hairy, corded hand of Edward Hyde on the bedclothes. He had transformed in his sleep without even taking the drug. The balance of his very nature is tipping. Soon he needs double, sometimes treble doses just to turn back into Jekyll. Finally, after he murders Carew, he's totally trapped. He has to remain Jekyll to avoid the gallows, but his body keeps spontaneously transforming into Hyde. To make matters infinitely worse, his original batch of chemical salts runs out, and he makes a horrifying discovery. His initial success? It was a total fluke. An unknown impurity in that very first batch was what actually made the drug work, and he can't replicate it.
And so we conclude the story with Jekyll's frantic, genuinely heartbreaking final statement. He's sitting alone in his locked laboratory writing these very words as the absolute last of the drug wears off. He realizes that within minutes, he's going to undergo the transformation one last time. Henry Jekyll will die to the world forever, and he will permanently become the despised, friendless, hunted murderer Edward Hyde. His final words end the narrative right there, bringing his life of profound duplicity to a tragic and utterly helpless close.
The strange case file of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde might be closed, but honestly, the psychological implications of it, they are wide open. Jekyll really thought he could compartmentalize his actions, that he could dabble in his darker desires without it ever actually affecting his core self. But he was dead wrong. So I want to leave you with this to ponder. If you were given the power to separate your own darkest impulses, to act out without any social consequence whatsoever, would you truly be able to control them? Or, much like Dr. Jekyll, would you eventually find that the monster inside is the one controlling you?